Good morning, everybody. Jay Womack, founder and CEO of Infinity Workforce Solutions. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our webinar will begin in just a few minutes. I appreciate y'all sitting on hold. While we're here waiting for everybody to jump on, I want to give a special shout out to our existing clients that are here with us today. You are proving to your entire workforce that safety is your number one concern, it's your number one priority, and we appreciate that because we are very, very good at delivering training for safety, for orientation, for ongoing corrective action, and you obviously have taken the jump into the company right now and you're using it, you're saying that your people are valuable to you, and that's exactly what we want, that's what you want, that's what your people want to hear. So we do have all the answers. We know exactly what we're doing in web-based training. We've been doing this for 15 years, but I have a special offer today for our prospects that show up. We'd like to offer you a 30-day free trial using our system completely. See what it's all about. See if you like using something like this. You know, remote training has jumped to the forefront of the world. In the last 90 days, the world has shifted, it's changed. Remote training, we are the experts. We know more about remote training than virtually anybody in the entire, world, universe. So I want to offer the 30-day free trial. Time offer is limited. Yeah, we can't make this go on forever. I wish we could. I'm even going to throw in a CSR rep, a client service rep that can make this thing hum for you, get user activity up on the system, because that's the key, get your people to use the system. I don't care how many bells and whistles you've got, if they're not going to use it, it's not going to have an impact for your company. And at the end of the day, that's what we're all about. We want to see your top line and bottom line improve. We want to see your safety record improve. That's what we do, and we do that better than anybody out there. Thanks for sticking with me. In the meantime, it's what you came for, it's the webinar. So Mark, if you're ready, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Jay. As always, I want to over-communicate Jay's industry support for over 25 years that have been involved with Jay for the safety, the well-being of our drivers in the trucking industry. So before we get into, we've got a really fantastic webinar today, which includes adverse weather. Today's October the 1st, it's 2020. Adverse weather has already begun. If it hasn't begun in your region, it's out there. But to get things started, if you want to take Jay up on his 30-day free trial offer, which I would certainly encourage you to do, just check yes right in front of you right now. If you could just pop a yes in there, just a couple of quick stats. Remote learning can result, and I can attest to this, in a 20% reduction in crash frequency, 80% reduction in violation, and a 50% reduction in training costs. Those are big numbers, very achievable. Remote learning through Infinity Workforce Solutions. The other thing I would offer is the ability to produce documentation of your training, and defending lawsuits and avoiding the nuclear verdict are a huge benefit. And I can tell you thousands of lives have been saved on our highways by the use of remote awareness training, which we're about to jump into on adverse weather. So I see a couple of people already checked yes. We get a couple more in there. We'll have an opportunity to do this again at the end and take up Mr. J on his 30-day free demo. So that being said, let's move to the next slide. My name is Mark Rhea. I've got 35 years in this trucking industry, and I can assure you I have been involved in a number of adverse weather situations, whether there's shutdowns, delays, crashes, fog, whiteouts, black ice, sleet, wind, smoke, you name it, it's real. And the weather is changing October 1st, 2020 as we speak. I want to urge you to listen to this webinar in its entirety. At the end, we have a live video to share from a multi-vehicle crash that's very illustrative of the reality of the multi-vehicle adverse weather pileup reality. I would also say multi-vehicle adverse weather accidents can be prevented. You've got to prepare ahead of time. We've got Lieutenant Wyrick I'm about to introduce from the great state of Wyoming to go over some of the adverse conditions that he sees. Let's try to stay out of a multi-vehicle adverse weather condition this year, and it can be done. So Lieutenant Daniel Wyrick is a seasoned career employee of the Wyoming Highway Patrol, 30 years in law enforcement. The last 16, he has been with the Wyoming Highway Patrol as a motor carrier trooper and inspector since 2008, and is currently serving as the commercial carrier supervisor for the state of Wyoming, and currently serves as the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance Region 4 president. So, being from the state of Wyoming and the commercial vehicle supervisor, it's fair to say you've seen a lot. Is that a fair statement, Lieutenant Wyrick?
That's a very fair statement, Mark. Thank you for the introduction.
Well, thank you for making our highways safe and helping us prepare for the upcoming season, which I think you've already had a little bit of season up there in Wyoming. Wind is always a big issue in Wyoming, and to illustrate that, we've got a quick dash cam to show, if we could advance. There's a highway patrolman. That's not you in that car, I hope, is it?
No, it is not.
Wow. Okay. That pretty much speaks for itself. Now, hopefully nobody was injured in that blowover. Is that what happened?
To my knowledge, nobody was hurt, including the drivers of the truck or the truck in front of all these patrol cars that actually they were already working a blowover. At that time, they estimated the gust of wind. Actually, the highest recorded wind that day was 105 miles an hour on crosswind. And this truck had a load that was less than or right around 10,000 pounds of payload in the trailer. So it was a very light load in comparison to a lot. And when you have sustained winds that day were around 75 to 80 miles an hour, and they were getting gusts up to 105.
So the logic that says the wind cannot blow over a trailer, loaded or empty, is not true in the state of Wyoming. Is that a fair statement?
Our spring, yeah, that's very true. Our springtime, we work multiple blowovers during wind events. We do try to get out ahead of it when, with proper signage and high vis signs and things of that nature to give operators a good heads up.
Well, I'm glad nobody was injured, and if you're going to be blown over, you don't want to be blown over on top of a highway patrol car. But unfortunately, that's what happened to that gentleman. So let's just get into a little bit of the realities of adverse weather. Earlier, I talked about whiteouts, fog, ice, black ice, sleet, wind, smoke, all that. We've got a couple of stats here. 5.8 million vehicle accidents per year. 21%, 1 out of every 5, is due to bad weather, and certainly can be avoidable if you prepare and are trained. I'm going to ask the lieutenant if he would please expand on, based on your experience with all of the adverse weather, multi-vehicle accidents that you've seen. Can you provide our listening audience some input on how to prepare their driver staff and their non-driver staff for the upcoming adverse weather conditions?
Mark, one of our biggest thing is as we get into the winter driving, and that can start as early as September. Like Mark said, we've already had one closure on I-80 due to snow and vehicle related crashes that closed the highway. So we start getting into August and September, it would be a very good idea to have your drivers prepared with warmer clothing than they would normally have in the summertime travel. And as you can see, this one was a springtime. Not only was it snow, but it was wind event as well. So though Wyoming doesn't require chains in the wintertime, those are a good idea. Paying attention to road conditions at all of our port of entries, that drivers, if they stop at any of our port of entries, we have road conditions on overhead monitors that are directly related to our 511 app that is provided free on the internet, but we do have it in our ports of entry. And of course, if they're at a port of entry, they can always ask our staff members on road conditions. But those apps, most states, I believe, have it. I know with our 511 app, we have all our surrounding states a link to their weather and road report apps as well. So, but preparing these, obviously good tires are paramount for this type of winter weather driving.
So just basic preparation and awareness is the key. We do have a quick poll question for the audience. Do you provide awareness training in your organization for adverse weather, yes or no? And if so, what format do you use? Flyers and posters, satellite messages, online training, conference calls, or something else? If you don't mind, answer those questions. I do have a couple of more questions for the lieutenant. Did you work this wreck, Lieutenant Wyrick?
No, this happened over between just west of Rollins, between Rollins and Wamsutter, out on I-80. So no, I did not work this crash.
Okay, well, let me ask you another question here. Can you walk us through the different restrictions, classifications, examples are when tire chains are required, rolling road closures, wind warnings? There's a number of different restrictions and classifications. Can you just walk through those with us real quick?
So we base our restrictions on, of course, the current weather. We'll have high wind warnings. We'll have wet or slick or wet slick roads. Those will all be listed out basically on the 511 app, and it's either green, orange, or red. And then they do have a yellow caution color behind these different warnings. But when we get to where there's no unnecessary travel, we're asking the motoring public to not travel because the road conditions are at a point where that is almost to the point where they're going to close the road. So the conditions out there are not good. When we have a closure, we have 405 miles of Interstate 80 that crosses Wyoming. And this also goes for I-25 that goes north and I-90, but with I-80 being the major corridor for east-west traffic across the nation, we can't handle the volume of traffic in the smaller towns along I-80, so they do what we call a rolling closure. So if we have a crash in say Evanston area on the west side of the state, they will eventually, once the parking starts filling up, they'll roll it back and close it. So they'll go from like Rock Springs to Rollins to Laramie, and then eventually Cheyenne, and then entry back into the state from either Colorado or Nebraska. And
so, yeah, and I'm going to assume, obviously, adverse weather is not isolated to the state of Wyoming. Something similar to that is nationwide relative to road closures and rolling closures and tire chains, things like that. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. So one of the biggest questions I get from companies is, do we require tire chains? And the answer for Wyoming is no. Unlike Colorado, they required it on I-70, basically west of Denver through to, almost to, I would think, Grand Junction, Colorado. They do have a chain requirement to go over those passes in the winter, and they have to be in possession of on the truck at the time of operation to go over those passes.
Well, conventional wisdom would tell me if it's bad enough to require change, it's bad enough to sit it out. But because the conditions can change so rapidly out there, and of course, you know, they're not. I was involved in a deposition in Pennsylvania where there were, I guess there were 80 different vehicles involved in a major pileup, and the plaintiff's attorney represented 21 different people in 21 different lawsuits. So it's a major crash event when we have a big pileup like that. Let me ask you another question here. Obviously, when a road is closed, whether it's voluntary or involuntary shutdown, that obviously is going to require a safe and legal place to park, which can be a challenge. Can you spend a few minutes reviewing the laws to parking and how our clients might help find a safe, legal place to park?
So, so like a lot of other places, Wyoming is very challenged in providing enough parking for commercial motor vehicles. We do have rest areas along the interstate system and even off the interstate system. Wyoming does restrict parking on controlled access highways, which Interstate 80 and most public roadways are restricted access, which means our engineering only allows entry and exit off the interstates at a certain point, because there's line of sight and different tabulations that go into where they will allow that to happen. So if we find trucks parked along the highway, our troopers will require them to move, because as you can see with the wind and the snow in this picture, a lot of this was due to the wind building up and drifting on the trucks that are parked, you know, that are crashed in this picture. But what started this one was someone stopped on the interstate and in blinding conditions, and then it starts drifting, and that's why one of the reasons we don't allow parking on the ramps and along the highway, especially during storms, is our plows are trying to keep the highways open or get them open, and if they continually run into vehicles parked on the road, it causes drifting conditions on the highway, and they can't keep up with it.
Well, you know, we talked earlier about preparation and training assignments. Obviously, a driver that's out there in adverse weather conditions certainly needs a support staff that can help him or her find a safe place so you can avoid getting into it. Because once you're in the middle of it, your options are pretty few, and obviously parking on the shoulder of an interstate is illegal, and contributes to these multi-vehicle accidents. So just getting some information out there to think about. Okay, we got some bad weather. I've got to find a safe place to park is something that everybody needs to consider, and the support staffs need to be able to help these drivers out there find that place. So that's a big issue is parking. Is that a fair statement?
That is a very, very fair statement, because when we get into these kind of conditions and these roads are closed for, you know, could be closed for 2 days. Do your drivers have enough warm clothing? Do they have enough fuel? Do they have enough food? You know, we are very concerned about that. Our troopers will check the rest areas and make sure everybody's doing well that way when they aren't busy working crashes or trying to keep the road closed. This particular crash that we're looking at now kept Interstate 80 closed for almost 4 days.
4 full days.
Yes, because this was only one of two. The total number of vehicles involved in this crash were almost 100 vehicles.
Wow.
And we ended up, one of the tow truck companies got with the school district in Rollins and actually got school buses to come out and take drivers and operators of private vehicles into town to get them to a motel until we could get this cleaned up.
So we need to do everything we can to keep our drivers from being in the middle of all of that somehow, some way. So let's just go to the next slide. Thank you very much for that commentary. Just a quick, just a little bit of what is it that's causing that. 400,000 injuries, 5,300 fatalities. That's from the Federal Highway Administration. Looking here at the weather conditions, it says wet, rain, snow, sleet, icy, and obviously there's a kind of a hybrid of those things. Could you kind of just review what you see of those different weather conditions and how they can change?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things, especially springtime in Wyoming, we can get, snow and ice and the wet. Eventually it gets cold enough, it freezes. We get rain, and then on top of it, then it turns to snow. But like we're looking at this picture at the bottom, this one, if I remember correctly, was about 45 cars and semi in this on Interstate 80 west of Laramie. It was very, very dense fog, and things just cascaded from a parked commercial vehicle on the road. And then
so this one initiated by a commercial vehicle parked on the shoulder?
That's what it was determined, yes.
Wow. Okay.
But so we get a lot of fogging conditions, and then that, adds to icing and everything that it lays down on the highway. But the biggest thing is drivers can run into this. I mean, on both sides of this crash, it was clear before they entered it. But there was a fog warning out at the time from a certain milepost to a certain milepost on Interstate 80. But that's just, the conditions can change.
So the fog can turn into snow, that can turn into sleet, that can turn back into rain. It's just a never-ending hybrid of all these conditions.
Yeah. Like we say in Wyoming, sometimes wait 5 minutes and the weather will change.
Well, I know a lot of our clients go through Wyoming, but I would also, Tennessee, Texas, Pennsylvania, Indiana, the adverse weather conditions that are upcoming are touch all of us, to include smoke, and we'll cover smoke here in just a minute. But the time to get ready is now for these adverse weather conditions, and get people to think about it and stay out of it. So let's go to the next slide, please. The three major causes, obviously, rain, snow, fog, smoke, smog, and smoke. We'll talk a little bit more about smoke because people don't think about that often, but it clearly has an impact on visibility. And we talked a lot about preparing. We do have a quick list here I'll go over of content that we have available that can get out this afternoon if you're a client, or if you take up Jay on his 30-day offer. Driving in extreme weather conditions, winter weather readiness checklist. You talked on that a little bit earlier. I think we'll recap that in just a minute. How to be ready for winter weather. Icy cab step leads to a broken arm. I can attest that icy cab steps can lead to more than a broken arm. We need to be aware of the injuries of getting in and out of your truck. Winter weather is a bad case of ice, and watch where you are walking. Do you want to expand on that last one, where you're walking? Do you see a lot of pedestrian-based accidents and injuries?
We do, Mark. We have, we require trucks to stop if they're not on a bypass system at our port of entry. So we do what we can to keep, the steps and things clear, but ice does build up occasionally, and we've had drivers slip and fall and end up going to the hospital because of injuries, like you said, broken arms, and other related injuries with falling on the ice. So during our winter months, it's, again, we try to do our best, and our port of entry staff do their best to keep the sidewalks clear, and even we bring the snow plows in to clear the lots for the drivers. But those accidents do happen, and we get usually one or two a year that our risk management has to deal with when we have.
Let me ask you this question: at your port of entries, and I don't know if this is for all states, at the port of entry, do the personnel at the port of entry, can they provide some assistance to the driver of upcoming road closures or conditions?
Again, Mark, like I said, in all of our port of entries, we have the monitors in the ports for the driving conditions on all the highways within the state of Wyoming, and they can help them, yes, with the road closures. They can direct them to the 511 app if they're on their cellular device, and can not even download it, they can just access it on the internet, free of charge.
Okay. Again, this content that we have already developed is immediately available. I would certainly recommend that this not only be assigned to your driving staff, but your non-driving staff. Everybody needs to be aware of the upcoming adverse weather conditions. So that's just a sample of what we have immediately available. If we can go to the next slide, please. We talked a little bit about smoke, and if I'm not mistaken, you have an ongoing fire today. Is that correct, Lieutenant?
Yes, we do. We have one which is south and west of Laramie. That's depending how the wind is shifting. Last I looked, it's a little over 70,000 acres of burn.
70? Yep,
70,000 acres. And it's right on the border of Colorado and Wyoming, more in Wyoming than it is in Colorado. But as we all know, this summer, just a few months ago, I-70 was closed because of the fire danger and smoke on the passes in Colorado. And I can't remember exactly what town, but they closed all of Interstate 70 to access because of the fire and the smoke danger.
Well, and that type of smoke can lead to a complete blackout or smoke out or completely not reduced. I mean, zero visibility.
And I'm sure they're experiencing the same in California and Oregon with the fires over there as well.
Yes, sir. Okay, well, and we do have a resource, airnow.gov, that can give you a little bit of insight on where the wildfires are that can certainly have a huge impact on traffic out there. So, okay, next slide, please. Okay, we talked a little bit about preparation. Here's a quick checklist of things that you can use. We can share this with the audience. We have the content, your driver's trained to drive in adverse weather. Obviously, slowing down. We have extensive training on that. My opinion on some of that is the best training you can do is to not drive in adverse weather. Just be prepared for it and avoid it. Equipment, tires, snow chains. I don't know, Lieutenant, if you've got some input on what you've seen for equipment requirements for adverse weather.
That really is it. I mean, if during the winter,
windshield wipers,
windshield wipers and fluid are very good. Then, of course, just making sure the triangles are there if they do get stranded, and communication with either their dispatch and being able to give an accurate location if they need assistance.
Know what your state's requirements are for snow chains, obviously.
We have a 2-tier system, Mark, in Wyoming. So if it's a tier 1, if you're 4-wheel driving, you have adequate tires are good. So this isn't going to apply to a lot of commercial vehicles. So you're going to have chains. irregardless if the tire chain law is in effect in the state of Wyoming. We don't do a lot of that on the interstates. It's more on our primary secondaries over mountain pass areas that will require the chains more than the interstate.
Okay, and you mentioned the 511 app. That's something you clearly would recommend.
Yes, most definitely. Not only will this give you weather conditions, it has a link to, we have electronic speed signs. So we have reduced speeds in effect at times as well. So if it's saying it's 45, even though it might be sunny and dry, what it's trying to do is warn of impending bad weather. And we're trying to get traffic slowed down because, again, it's that accordion effect where if everybody's running into it faster than the people that are in the condition at the time, we end up with problems. So we do have the reduced speed limits available to us.
This is clearly something support staff needs to be involved in, monitoring those road conditions and weather procedures, knowing exactly what am I going to do. This is something I would very much encourage support staff to detail, get this content out to your drivers. What are the procedures? What do I do if I find myself in the middle of adverse weather conditions, and have a plan, not to just roll into a big multi-vehicle mad scramble, and thinking ahead of and getting people to think about it will certainly help. And we talked about parking on the shoulders, not a good idea at all. But it happens every year, and it happens in multiple states. It's going to happen this year. That's not the correct response. You want to comment on that parking on the shoulder issue?
Again, yes, Mark.
I mean, we've already talked about it, but it requires. We can talk about it for another hour, and hopefully everybody will accept that.
Yeah. Again, it's not allowed except for in cases of emergency, and even when it's those emergencies, I mean, I review all commercial motor vehicle crashes that happen in the state of Wyoming, and there are a number, and I can't give you an exact number, but that where a parked vehicle, either CMV or passenger vehicle, gets struck while they're parked on the interstate, and that's what we want to try to avoid.
We want to avoid that. Yes, sir. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. A little bit on preparation. We talked about support staff, and again, I want to over communicate that we have content that needs to be shared with both drivers and support staff on how to track weather conditions, how to advise drivers on safe operations, specifically parking, how to prepare. They need to be the supporting staff for our drivers that are out there maneuvering through this. So we do have a lot of content on that, and I would encourage you to, like I said, to get that assignments out if you are an existing client, or if not, Jay's got you a 30-day free trial offer. You can get it out this afternoon. So the driver depends on that support staff for good information, and we need to be able to provide it to, and they'll thank you. I mean, let's call it like it is. There will be a number of multi-vehicle adverse weather accidents this winter, and I did one time have a driver call and thank me one time for doing some training ahead of time, because he had heard about a multi-vehicle accident and said, I'm just glad I wasn't in the middle of that. I just wanted to thank you for having me think about that. So they will thank you for not being involved in those issues. Next slide, please. This is just an illustration of, wow, look at that. Holy cow. Now, did you work this accident, Lieutenant?
No, thankfully I didn't. This one was when I was working up on the 2 lanes. I believe this was in 2015, so it was right before I came to Cheyenne.
You know, you look at that, and it's hard to put a dollar amount on the claims, the verdicts, the injuries, the deaths. Wow. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. That's what we're trying to avoid. Okay, well, here's just a quick overview of all of our clients. Obviously, they're not all in the state of Wyoming, but a lot of them go through the state of Wyoming. But these adverse weathers are not isolated to Wyoming. They're all over the country. Plaintiffs' attorneys love them, and they're avoidable. The point I would like to get across is adverse weather conditions are a high priority topic. Today is October 1st. The timing is right to get out your online training to improve the awareness to avoid these nasty situations. Infinity Workforce has a complete library of modules on adverse weather that can be immediately assigned. Let me ask the lieutenant, are multi-vehicle pileups preventable?
I believe they are, yes. If we pay attention to our weather patterns and allow drivers to pull over when they start incurring the hazardous conditions, I think it would improve.
So preparation and training and simulation and all of those buzzwords are very relevant to being able to get through the winter and fall with the fog. That is very applicable in this real world.
Yes.
Okay. Next slide, please. Oh, we do have I want to also, there's the 30-day free trial offer. I want to get that up again. If you have some questions, okay, now that you know what you need to share with your drivers and driving staff, if you want free access, just click yes. If you want to speak to Lieutenant Wyrick, say yes. I did want to tell everybody we're going to end this with an audio that we have from a multi-vehicle. It's very, it really illustrates the reality of a multi-vehicle. If you are an existing client, I would encourage you to get with your CSR today and get some of this content out. If you're not, if you want to take Jay up on the 30-day free trial, all you got to do is put the yes right there and somebody will get right back with you. I think the key is the timing is now. Lieutenant Wyrick, would you agree with that? Not in the middle of, if we get this content out in February, it's too late. We need to get that out today. Is that a good recommendation?
Very good recommendation, Mark. Yeah, because like I said, our weather, and at least in Wyoming, and I mean, it can happen anywhere, you know, yep, with adverse weather. The training is pertinent for drivers.
It would be nice if some of your wreckers contacted you and say, "Hey, we wish we had more wrecks," but we want to stay out of that. So we've covered a lot of information today. The key is now. I did want to go ahead and tell everybody our next webinar scheduled for October 15th is on intersections. We have a guest from the insurance industry that's going to help us frame the emerging issue of increased intersection crashes and what to do about those. I want to thank everybody again, and I want to especially thank Lieutenant Wyrick and the other peace officers, highway patrolmen across the nation, as they help us get through this winter. And hopefully we can help you out a little bit by preparing our drivers and our driving staff for those conditions, because they're going to happen. So thank you very much for what you do, Lieutenant.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me.
I hope you don't get too much. I hope you don't get too busy this winter, but I've got a feeling you probably will be busy.
Well, I certainly hope the best for our troopers out on the road as well that are
yes, sir,
to do this and that they're safe. Thank you.
And I'm certainly glad nobody was in that highway patrolman's car that got the blowover on top of him.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so We're going to close a little different today. We have a live audio. We'll just cue that up, and this will close out our webinar. Again, we'll see you on October the 15th. Again, thank you, Lieutenant Wyrick. And Colin, if you can crank up that audio, we'll just let that play. Thank you very much.
Down. Oh, jeez. Slow down.
You're right.
What should we do?
I don't know what's going on.
Oh, man.
Is this storm? Katie, está horrible, Katie. Hay muchos trailers, unos arriba de otros. Está horrible.